WVVA in Focus, a weekly program about important issues and events in the two Virginias.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Melinda Zosh. This morning, we're talking to author Myra Alley Kingsbury, and also joining us will be her brother, Dave Glenn Alley, and we're talking about a book called Mawzy's Hope Chest. So really excited to welcome our guest this morning. Myra, I'll start with you. You have the book here on set for us to take a look at, and I love the cover art already, but what is this book all about?
Well, it's about my grandmother, affectionately known as Mawzy, so the book's title is Mawzy's Hope Chest. Her given name was Grace Louise Walker, and then when she married, she became Campbell. So I never really had a goal to write a book, so Mawzy came to me and asked me to write this book because I started digging in her hope chest, trying to show my mother some pictures because she was starting to get dementia, and so I'd never really looked beyond the photo albums. And so I started digging around in the hope chest, and the first thing I found that piqued my interest was a ledger. And so it had her name on it. It had Woodrow Wilson High School, and I knew that she had graduated from Woodrow Wilson, although she grew up in a little community called Springdale. So I opened it up, and it was her expenditures for her senior year in high school. So this was 1928, 1929, and all of a sudden I got this picture of this young woman in the 20s in Beckley going to high school. And there were things like Marcel. So I had to look up what a Marcel was. It was a hairstyle, like the wave.
Interesting.
And so she called her underwear bloomers. So it was just pinpoints, so you could start to get kind of a sense of the times. And so I just kept digging a little deeper. I wasn't going to write a book then. The next thing I found that really got me thinking about it was it was an old wooden box. And I opened it up, and on the top was her marriage certificate, bound in baby blue leather. Underneath the marriage certificate were 66 love letters that her boyfriend had written to her during about a 5-year period. So you think about someone like this going to high school, and you think, okay, they start first grade, they go all the way through grade 12. Well, this was she started first grade in 1915.
Wow.
So she goes 1 year, and then the Spanish flu hits. And so the school was closed down. So she misses that year of school. Then she goes back, and then 8th grade, you're done. There's no high school in the area. And she had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. And so she started exploring where she could go to high school, and that's when she came up on Beckley. That was before Woodrow Wilson, so she went to Beckley High School. But then she found out you could teach after an 8th grade education if you could pass an exam. So she took the exam, passed, and so she taught for 2 years on Bacchus Mountain, which was way out in the middle of nowhere, one-room school, and then she taught back at her alma mater in Springdale. And she was doing summer school in between all of this so she could keep her teacher's certificate, and then finally she had enough credits to go to Woodrow Wilson for her senior year. So just, I thought there was a story to be told there. The other thing I'll mention is she was very influential for my brother and I. She helped to raise us. And so not until I got older did I realize the impact of her guidance. And so this book is also about the impact that she had on my life and my success in life. So I just thought it would be good to give her a tribute.
So Myra, why do you feel like it's important to share that story, not just with your family, but through the book, you're sharing it essentially with Southern West Virginians and even beyond?
Right. Well, there's many reasons. I think when we're young, no longer but you think your grandparents are going to be around forever. Yeah. And so you don't think about asking them questions, and you can't imagine how I would love to go back and say, Mawzy, I have got some questions.
And maybe to put her on video camera and even to see that and watch it back.
Yeah, exactly right. So I would encourage your audience out there to go talk to your grandparents, talk to your aunts and uncles. She was the oldest in her family. And her younger brother's wife, we called Aunt Biddy, because she was small. And she's still living. Wow. And so I would go back, every time I came back to West Virginia, I'd go in and we'd sit out on her front porch, or we'd sit in the kitchen, and I filled up notepads of stories that she told me. So at least I got some of that. Her oldest daughter, my Aunt Eleanor, was still living when I started this. And so I did the same thing. I just asked all kinds of questions. At that point, my mother had dementia, so it was too late to ask her the questions. So I think it's getting out to people. It's nostalgic. So, you know, people from her era, maybe not living now, but their children could relate to the conditions that she went through. And also, as baby boomers, David and I being boomers, I mean, I talk about one of the first chapters is early memories of living at Mawzy's house. And so it's that boomer era. There's a chapter, some of the chapters are themed, some are chronological, but there's a chapter, the arrival of the TV. So there's not a boomer out there that doesn't remember when the first television came into their house. So, and there are even recipes in the back because she loved to cook. So I put some of her, you know, I could tell the favorite recipes because they had the most splashes on them.
Oh, I can imagine from her cooking and it just getting on the pages.
Right.
What's your favorite recipe in the book that she used to cook?
Oh, peanut butter cookies.
That sounds amazing.
And it was the old-fashioned peanut butter cookies where you crisscrossed with a fork, and she had little notations, so if I shared notations if she'd made any of those on the recipe. That and fried apple pies.
They both sound good.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Dave, I'd like to bring you in here to get some input as well. Why do you think it was important for your sister to write this book and share more about Mawzy?
I think it's like, almost like archaeology. You open up the hope chest, and the hope chest inspired her, and the memory of our grandmother, and it just all fell together like that. And you ask her a question about having a conversation, or going back and having a conversation with her. I mean, on Facebook, on social media, sometimes we'll see a question, kind of an open-ended question, and they'll say, if you could go back and have a conversation with just anyone, you know, and a lot of times, you know, having been in the music business, I would say, well, you know, first thought would be maybe John Lennon or somebody like that, but you know, really, it would be Mawzy.
Yeah.
What do you think she would say if she was around today, just about the book and about what you've done to reach people?
That's a good question. I think she would be proud of me, but I think she would be, maybe I might have embarrassed her a few times.
Did you? Give us an example of maybe what you said in the book
Well, so I talked about the arrival of the TV, right? So one of the things I talked about when the delivery guy came in, he's setting up the TV. I'm 3 years old. So, you know, we're all excited. He's hopping around, and there was a cushion laying on the floor. And so I get on this cushion, I'm flopping around all over the place, and I had a dress on, and I was not being very ladylike. And so she scolded me for showing my underwear when the television delivery guy was there. So that probably would have embarrassed her. Her father was quite a character. We called him Poppy Walker. And he used some salty language, and so there's a little bit of salty language in here, but it's his character. So she may have said, well, Myra, you didn't have to do that.
Right. But, I mean, you got to share those stories, though, too, because people can relate to that, because we have those in all of our families where we can relate to those embarrassing moments.
Yes,
so,
that's right.
Well, we do have to take a quick break. We have much more to talk about. We'll be right back after this. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to this edition of In Focus. This is the cover art I was telling you all about in the last segment, but it's beautiful. And the book is called Mawzy's Hope Chest, and we've been talking with the author Myra Alley Kingsbury and her brother Dave, but just a great book. I love the art. I was kind of perusing through on the break, and Myra, there's a lot of different pictures in here. So anyone who picks this up will see right away, I mean, just some old nostalgic looking pictures. Can you share with us more about some of these photos that are in the book?
Sure. So I'll go back to the beginning because there is a picture of her. It's one of the first chapters, and it's a picture of her on the couch holding David and I.
Aww.
So it was almost like she was our mama bird, and she was making sure that we were going to be safe. And then, you know, back in the day, they always made quilts. So she made quilts, and they were out of old dress scraps.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
It was like, oh, this is like getting a hug from Mawzy, even if she's not there.
Yeah.
So there's a picture of us that we're out in the backyard.
Oh, how cute.
And yeah,
Aww.
we're on one of Mawzy's quilts.
Oh my gosh, and both of you are just smiling, looking so happy,
Yeah,
and cute little kids.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, and this is
Adorable.
the chapter called The Kids' Playground. So, I mean, we ran wild in the woods when we were kids and played in the creek, and, you know, so that's what this chapter is about.
So what is your favorite part of the book? If you had to pick one part of your book, what is your favorite?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough question. When I first started writing the book, of course, I didn't set out to be an author, so I took some writing classes and had some of my writing critiqued, and then ended up, hiring a coach to help me, get through the process. So I started out writing with what I was familiar with. And that's a kid's playground with the picture I just showed you, because there are some adventures that you take when you're a kid that are just so vivid that they happened yesterday. And so it was how we lived when we were at Mawzy's house, and the care she gave during that time. And we got into some skirmishes, so
Oh, I can imagine.
she had to fix us up. And one of the things I say in the book is, after we'd gotten scratched up on one of our adventures, the methylate, I don't even know if you know that term, but you dotted it on your wounds, and it was orange. So you ended up with all these little orange dots wherever you'd hurt yourself, so you looked like a polka dotted kid.
But adorable at the same time.
Yeah.
And Dave, what did it mean for you to see your sister publish this book? And like she mentioned, you didn't really have a background in writing. You got some training. What does it mean for you to see that Myra's published this book?
Took her 3.5 years to write the book, and I think it was a labor of love, but she wanted to get it right. Very meticulous in her research. I was like her walking archive, because I'm a bit older and I had memories to share with her that embellished it some, but she gets all the credit for doing a great job. The book is one part anecdotal, one part history, one part humor. There's a good bit of that, and a whole lot Mawzy.
And for those who are interested, I do want to mention where they can get that book. So I know you have a list here. So what are some options for folks to go out and purchase this book, Myra?
Right. Well, there are several locations at this point. A New Chapter bookstore in Lewisburg has copies. The Cathedral Cafe in Fayetteville. Of course, it's available on Amazon if somebody wants to go there. The Hatter's Bookshop in Princeton carries it. And then the Alderson store in Alderson carries it, and the Otter and Oak in Hinton. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, several options. What's the goal for the future? Are you hoping to write another book, or just expand your reach?
Just expand my reach. I used up all I had in this book.
I don't know, there might be a little bit more.
There might be.
Well, part 2.
That is a good point, because everybody I've talked with, it always brings back a memory. So just at the Shay at the A New Chapter bookstore in Lewisburg says, yeah, it reminds me of my grandpa's quilt, and it was it was that felt kind of plaid, and she says, I just cherish that quilt. And then somebody else said to me, yeah, this reminds me of that. They always talked about George and how he got kicked in the head by a horse, and he was a little odd after that. And she said, I started digging around, and I actually found out that was a true story. So it tends to bring out memories for people.
And who's the demographic that you are trying to reach with your book?
Well, there's a lot, because she was a teacher. She ended up being the principal of Springdale Elementary, and there are interludes in the book. They're called school days, and they're themed. So anybody that's ever taught school is going to be able to relate to that. And some of those school days, for example, one is called Discipline and Safety and Learning Go Hand in Hand. And she was a strong disciplinarian. So she could not do today in the school system what happened back then. But she ran a tight ship. The kids were there to learn. She loved them, and she wanted them to be walking the line. So I would say that. I would say people that have an interest in West Virginia history would have an interest in this, because she was born in 1907, and it goes all the way through to her death in 1988. So there is history there. She lived in a coal camp for a while. Gentry Holler was the name of the coal camp near Leyland. And so it was just about life in a coal camp, so that's included in this. And I would also say it's a book about empowerment, because she went through so much tragedy and so many hard times. Spanish flu, World War I, World War II, Great Depression, a divorce in an era where it was not acceptable with 3 young children, and she just kept on pushing. So when I went back to school to get my master's degree, I was single, didn't have any responsibilities, no kids, and I just kept thinking, if she could do that, while she was teaching school, going to school,
Wow.
raising us as grandchildren, you know, trying to help my mom who was struggling. If she could do it, why couldn't I? So I do really think it's a book about empowerment.
Right, and just inspiration and just learning from someone else's story. Like you mentioned, like she went through a lot in her life, even with the Spanish flu, and with us living through the COVID pandemic. I mean, that's a whole other story, but she went through a lot in her life. What else do you hope to accomplish by writing this book? Your brother said that it was a multi-year process to get it together. What do you think you accomplished as an individual by going through the process of writing this book?
I've learned so much. I mean, I learned so much about her, so much more than I've realized. I mean, she was so much more than I ever realized. And just the history of it. And I'll give you an example of that. She started the Hot Lunch School program at the Springdale School in 1954, the year of my birth. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do some research on this. I'm going to find out all about it, right? And so I'm doing research, and it was fascinating, just absolutely fascinating how the whole program got started and how in the beginning there was food items brought in, and there were canneries. The food had to be canned so that it could be gotten to the schools, so before it rotted, you know. And so I'm like, this is really cool. And so I wrote probably 4 or 5 pages about this whole hot lunch program. And my writing coach says, too much. You're getting away from the story about Mawzy.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, so he gave me, one of his expressions was, a pound of research will give you an ounce of book.
Kind of like what we do in TV news,
Yes.
30-minute interview, get it down to like 30, 40 seconds sometimes.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah,
What he's saying is it was like kind of off focus. You want to focus and hone in on what Mawzy's story
Right.
really
So I
was.
learned a lot going through the process.
How many chapters are in the book, Myra?
Gosh, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but 20,
But
about
it's-
25, I guess, and then there's an appendix. So remember I told you about Poppy Walker?
Yeah.
Well, in the appendix, there's a section called Poppy's Rant.
Oh, okay.
So he basically threw Mawzy under the bus because he was
no.
complaining about taxes and teachers getting paid too much.
Oh, no. How did she react to that?
She didn't like it.
I bet
she was
didn't.
not happy about it. But you know, it didn't fit into the book, and I thought I've got to get that in there because really, it's the same rant we hear today. I mean, it's there's always that conflict, but.
And Dave, why do you think it's important for people to take a look at Mawzy's Hope Chest? I mean, there's a lot of options for people to read books online these days. You know, you got Kindle, you have your Kindle, you have your iPhone that you can take a look at different things. But why do you think it's important to actually pick up Mawzy's Hope Chest and to read it?
I think a lot of times on Kindle and some of those sites like that, there aren't the pictures. You don't have the advantage of the pictures, at least, that you can keep and look at and show someone, and like that, it's easier to do with
And
this
just holding the book,
more
too. There's just-
tactile.
right,
Yeah.
there's something about holding the book and having time to sift
able to
through
go
it,
through
which is
it,
really
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
We do have to take one more quick break. Again, we have more to talk about. We'll be right back right after this. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to this edition of In Focus. This morning, we've been talking about this wonderful book called Mawzy's Hope Chest. Again, I love holding this book and just looking at the cover art. And I want to welcome back our guests, Myra Alley Kingsbury, and also her brother Dave is here talking about the book. And I want to talk about the scholarship in just a minute, but Myra, I can't stop looking at this picture, and I guess that's Mawzy smiling, right?
It is. Yes, it is.
She was a beautiful lady.
Yes. Yes, and that picture, I mean, that's one of her school pictures, and some of her pictures, she was very stoic. She was the principal. She was she was in charge. She had to be tough. But that one brought her spirit out, and so that's why I wanted to put it on the book, because she had a sense of humor. It was a dry sense of humor, but she did have a sense of humor. And I wanted to get the Hope Chest on the cover of the book. Somebody asked me the other day, what is the Hope Chest? And I thought, well, that's kind of a thing of the past, but I wanted to get that on. And then the background is actually the hills of West Virginia. It's a photo that I took when I was traveling around.
And if you look closely, you'll see a little cardinal back there too.
Yeah.
Dave's shaking his head because there's a story behind that. That's for another day. But I do want to talk about the scholarship. So Myra, I'll start with you. Share with our viewers some information about the scholarship.
It really wasn't something that I started out thinking about. But as I wrote the book and realized the importance that Mawzy had played in a lot of kids' education and in our lives in particular, you know, I thought I need to pay this forward. And so I decided that I wanted to have proceeds from the book go into a scholarship. Mawzy went to Concord University. David and I went to Concord University. My mom and her sister, Aunt Eleanor, went to Concord University. So I thought that's got to be where the scholarship is established. And, you know, not knowing how many copies of the book you're going to sell, I'm like, I need to see this scholarship so that I know that it's going to benefit. And so I just want to pay it forward.
Well, that's wonderful. So, Dave, can you touch on that a little bit more and how the scholarship works as well?
Well, the scholarship is for young women in a 10-county area. And Myra is humility over hubris. She won't tell you about the amount, and she has coached me not to. All I'm going to say is Myra has done very well, thanks to the ripple effect of Mawzy's coaching and mentoring and motherhood. So there are 6 zeros attached to the scholarship out of Myra's pocket.
Wow.
Yeah.
5 and 1.
Oh, yeah, 5 and 1.
Yeah,
not
a
yeah.
million.
I wasn't very good at math.
Especially in his head.
I'm not the best at math either, honestly. A lot of us people who studied communications, like it's not our forte. But so how does one go about applying for the scholarship? What is the name, and share with our viewers more in case there's a student watching, a potential student at Concord or a parent who might be interested.
The scholarship will be for a young woman, and I shouldn't say young, anybody attending, a woman attending Concord University, studying either education or finance, because I ended up in the financial arena. And again, it's Southern West Virginia. I wanted to impact those people that are right around us here. So I can't rattle off the 10 counties to you, but they're in this area.
If someone was interested in learning more, is there a Facebook page or website they could go to do some more research on the scholarship?
I'm sure there is. It's through the Concord University Foundation.
Okay,
so it
they
is
could
set
reach
up
out to
through
them,
the,
though.
yeah, it's all
Okay.
set up through the university, so it should be in their system.
Oh, that's so wonderful. So all the proceeds from the book are going to that scholarship.
Correct.
Oh, Myra, that's so wonderful for you to do that.
Now, Mawzy would have liked that.
So what would Mawzy say if she knew that all the proceeds from the book were helping a young woman? What do you
She'd
think
say, I'm proud of you, Myra.
Aw. That's so
would.
sweet. Well, she's
Yeah.
smiling. You can see her in the
Yeah,
book. See, this is her being happy about it. And Dave, why do you think it was important to establish this scholarship and to help these young women as well?
Because we live in a time when a lot of people need help. I mean, I've done a lot of work with kids over the years, and I won't go into that. My background was in broadcast radio, but I did a lot of incentive rewards parties for young kids, and I've started doing some research of my own. There are foster kids in this country and kids being raised by their grandparents, and if you combine that, it's 2.7 million.
Wow.
1% of our population, if I'm not mistaken.
The entire population.
It's close, it's close to that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, a lot of these young women and men, for that matter, need help, and this gets it done. And by the way, Myra mentions us, playing it forward, what we've done in our lives. But I got to tell you the family joke.
Okay.
And you've already seen my faux pas with the math. Myra was runner-up to Miss West Virginia one year.
Oh, that's wonderful, Myra.
So the joke in the family is
He's telling this to
she
our
got the
viewers.
looks, she got the brains, I got the voice, and she didn't need this anyhow.
Oh my goodness. I feel like there's a song like that, like she's got the look. I can't really sing, but I feel like there's a song.
I can't either, so
reminiscent
don't
of
ask
that.
me to.
I was gonna say we'll leave it at that, but Myra, that's wonderful too. That you have such a humility about you. I can see exactly what Dave's saying, really. You have a sense of humility. What do you hope that our viewers take away from this segment? If they just take away 1 or 2 things about Mawzy and about your book, what do you hope it is?
Well, there was one quote that I put in the book that she always said to David and I, and she said, education is something no one can ever take away from you. And so that's what I would say. Wow. If you want to move forward, education's the answer.
Well, that's powerful too. And just the encouragement of that she was a single mom and juggling a lot of different hats, and she still made all of her goals happen. And Dave, what do you hope our viewers take away from this segment this morning?
Well, I hope it'll pique their interest in buying the book, obviously, but for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And just for seeing, what someone with that kind of influence, sphere of influence, can do for her family.
Right, and
Yeah.
again, paying it forward because the proceeds, if you buy Mawzy's Hope Chest, they go to a great cause. And let's tell our viewers one more time before we close out where they can get the book at.
Okay, it's available at A New Chapter in Lewisburg, Cathedral Cafe in Fayetteville, on Amazon, at the Hatter's Bookshop in Princeton, Alderson Store, which is in Alderson, West Virginia, and the Otter and Oak in Hinton.
Okay, wonderful. So lots of different options, and you can also go on Amazon. If you can't make it out physically to one of those locations, you can go on Amazon, and this might even be a great gift for someone coming up for the holiday, too.
Yeah, I've had people buy them for Christmas gifts. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And it will help girls from 10
Yes.
different counties.
Exactly,
Yeah.
with the scholarship.
Mercer, Raleigh, Fayette, Summers, all the way west as far as
Greenbrier.
Kanawha and Putnam and Green.
So wonderful.
Yes.
And Myra and Dave, I want to thank you both so much for joining us this morning and sharing more about Mawzy's Hope Chest. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That does it for us this morning. We hope you have a great day. We'll see you again next Sunday.